Alright, quite a life the Americans had there in the Eastern Province during the 1930s and the 1940s as part of the Arabian American Oil Company. The world was changing. Decolonization movements in Algeria, in Southeast Asia, what will eventually become the Vietnam War for us, in India with Gandhi, are taking place all over the world. The West, after World War II, is no longer able to take what it needs from the developing world and return to the West with its bounty. No, that will no longer be the case. Now these big four oil companies, Chevron, Texaco, Exxon, and Saucony Vacuum, or Mobil, realize this. They see the handwriting on the wall, and instead of losing everything in a violent revolution, such as would happen a couple years later in nearby Egypt with Gamal Abdel Nasser, or in Southeast Asia with the French, they began to bring the Saudis into the game. In 1950, for the first time, profits are split, conveniently, 50-50, between the Big Four and the Saudi royal family, the House of Saud. Prior to this, the Saudi royal family had been paid concession fees, like that in 1933 paid by Standard Oil of California, also known later as Chevron. 50-50 in 1950. 10 years later, OPEC was founded, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, when the balance of power shifted yet again. Let's take a look at OPEC. Founded in 1960 in Baghdad, Iraq, originally consisted of just 5 countries, with Saudi Arabia being the most lucrative of the 5. Notice also there, number 5, Venezuela, a country that's been in the news quite a bit in the last few years. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, and Venezuela formed the original 5 members of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. This was a sea change in the balance of power between the developing world and the developed world, between the West and the Third World. Europe and the United States would now have to negotiate instead of simply take what they needed from the developing world. A relationship that in the present day seems very imbalanced in favor of not us, but rather in favor of had been the developing world. OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. This gave the Saudis a much stronger negotiating position than they had previously enjoyed. And by 1973, the Saudi royal family will directly control 25% of the Arabian American Oil Company, Aramco, with the remaining 75% being held by the Big Four. 1 year later, that percentage jumps to 60%. And by the end of the 1970s, the Arabian American Oil Company no longer exists. Instead, it is Saudi Aramco, a company that is wholly owned and operated by the House of Saud. Not a publicly traded company. You cannot buy stock in Saudi Aramco. Yet, it is quite possibly the most valuable company on planet Earth. Petrodollars, ladies and gentlemen. The most valuable publicly traded company in the world is Exxon Mobil, worth today about $1/3 of $1 trillion, $350 billion. Exxon Mobil is publicly traded. You can buy shares of it on the New York Stock Exchange. By comparison, estimates in the value of Saudi Aramco vary, but most hover in the neighborhood of $750 billion in value, $750 billion in market capitalization. It is the most valuable thing in the world. Saudi Aramco. going to go back to the documentary now and pick the story of the House of Saud in this new petrodollar era. We left off in the last lecture with the assassination of King Faisal in 1975. Faisal died when Saudi Arabia was truly coming into its own as a power. Under the rule of King Khaled and King Fahd, Saudi Arabia would become one of the richest countries on the planet. Let's go to the tape.